Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to a Star Wars trailer reaction. And unlike what I sometimes do, especially with the Star Wars movie trailers, I'm not going to be breaking this one down looking for details. Instead, I'll be giving my impressions, and I'm kind of in a unique situation. As some of you know, I actually got to try this game at E3 this year. So that has affected how I'll react to this trailer somewhat, and I'll make sure to talk about that as we go on. So I'm not going to do a scene-by-scene breakdown or any sort of wild speculation, but it does seem pretty clear how the game will progress narratively. You'll most likely start off as Cal in his incognito position working in that shipyard or sort of recycling facility. We saw in the first trailer that he'll rescue someone in peril, and that will most likely draw the attention of the Empire and especially the Inquisitorius. After that, and after he meets up with his full crew, we know that his goal is basically to rebuild the Jedi Order, something that pretty clearly he fails. Along the way, he will be running into the Inquisitorius some more, at least the second sister and the ninth sister. But I'm going to leave the deeper conversation about that stuff, especially the Inquisitorius, to Star Wars Explained or another YouTube channel which is more familiar with the canon. However, the way they've actually looked into the Darth Vader comics is the first thing I wanted to talk about. It's really cool, and this is the first time I think that the new expanded universe has really done this, that they're interconnecting the various aspects of the universe. What I mean is that if you've read the Darth Vader comic, which is probably one of the most popular new canon sort of entities so far, then you'll get more out of this game. That was something we saw a lot with old canon, and we got a little bit of it in Star Wars Battlefront 2, but mostly in references or background details, so it's good to see that finally being embraced in a meaningful way. But back to gameplay, it's obvious that there will be a pretty heavily open world aspect, not only from individual levels. We saw in the gameplay demo from E3 that you could go around the level and then initiate quests, which is a pretty common method of having like a quasi-overworld, but more than that, you can visit planets and go back and forth between different locations, perhaps at will. I mean, I'm sure there are cases where you're locked off from going back or going forward, but it doesn't seem like you have to visit Kashyyyk first, for example. And I kind of wonder whether the Inquisitorius will maybe be tied in as sort of mini-bosses for each world. I think that would be pretty cool most of all. But that's basically all I wanted to have to talk about plot and gameplay. I think you guys mostly will have gotten that from other YouTubers or really just yourself. You guys can do your own analysis. What I want to talk about is my experience playing the game and whether the trailer makes me feel better or worse about what's coming. So, if you guys watched my prior video, I was very positive about my experience with Jedi Fallen Order, and that wasn't because I was flown out there, but that being said, you guys should know that and sort of keep my opinion in check. But it was because it is genuinely a very fun game. Do I think that it breaks any boundaries or really moves video games forward as a whole? Probably not, but it does what it needs to do quite well. It's an extremely solid, and I think it will be a difficult as well, action game. So here's sort of how I would explain it. It's not like the Force Unleashed because you can't spam buttons, at least not on normal difficulty or above, and you're not like a demigod. Rather, you're someone who's probably a bit more skilled than a Padawan, but not a full Jedi Knight or Master. And each encounter will be relatively difficult to survive. That means, yes, if you're not paying attention, a scout trooper from long range probably could kill you. However, and some people have made the Dark Souls sort of reference, which I think makes sense, if you're smart, you can also kill most enemies in one hit. I don't think you could kill the Purge Troopers right away, but essentially you're rewarded for careful gameplay, taking risks, and basically performing the right action rather than spamming buttons or kind of developing all-around powerful moves. And the combat feels extremely tight and extremely solid, even in the version that we were playing. It's really satisfying, especially to kill stormtroopers, and the tougher enemies should sort of get you excited and should also scare you a little bit. I got to play the Imperial Security droid, like K2SO, and it was pretty scary when he dropped down. He was a big presence and very powerful. That being said, alongside that, obviously, when a game is focused on fighting, comes the issue of it becoming stale, especially when it's a single player game only, and it will most likely be spread out over 20 hours or so, maybe more. That's not coming from EA, it's just sort of my estimation. Now, when I interviewed the developers, they didn't say anything about lightsaber styles or postures, And if I were just to guess, I don't think they'll be in the game. However, what they did mention is that the character will be progressing throughout the story. And in this trailer, I did see some moves which I think weren't in the build that I played, whether they weren't unlocked yet or they were just additional animations. Because when I played, I did notice that there were only a few finishers when you did a certain action. So that is one thing I'm a little bit concerned about, but I don't think will end up being an issue in the long run. Enemy variety though is something I am kind of concerned about. We don't see any more sort of the basic enemies in this trailer. We see the sort of scout trooper with the staff, we see regular stormtroopers, and we see purge troopers. Hopefully they can figure out some other sort of low level troops to throw in, because although you will be fighting bosses a lot, it seems based on this trailer, you do need some sort of fodder to change between level to level. In the first trailer, we did see him fight bugs as well, but I think for those skeptical about the game, maybe that's just something to keep your eyes on. However, we did also see in this trailer Cal fighting the second sister, and I do think boss battles in this game are going to be just phenomenal. So if we can fight different members of the Inquisitorius, I think that will be somewhat like Dark Souls, kind of like I mentioned earlier. Each boss will certainly be very different. The second sister and the ninth sister, for example, won't fight in the same way whatsoever. And based on the little bit of breathing you can hear in the trailer, I'm wondering if we'll get a confrontation, perhaps a failed confrontation to end the game against Darth Vader. That would be bold, maybe a little bit predictable, but interesting as well. Some people I saw on Reddit mentioned that perhaps the game ends with a Halo Reach style confrontation against Vader, where no matter what, you just can't win, and I think that would be pretty cool. I want to talk about one more thing that I'm a little bit worried about before I get on my final positive thought and I guess my overall impressions, and that is sort of linearity. In the first gameplay trailer, there's a pretty long section that was essentially a quick time event. And we've seen the same sort of thing in the other trailers, and now in this we've got the portion where Cal is going down the slide. It's obviously not a slide, but that's what he's doing, in the part where he's trying to wrangle a flying beast. Now, I don't think this will be a walking or a hallway simulator, and as long as it looks cool, that should be okay, but I don't want the game to devolve too far into lots of portions where I'm watching the game do something rather than playing. But onto positive now, the one thing that I feel really good about, especially after watching this trailer, is the characters and the plot / I guess theme and tone. The first trailer seemed really muddy to me, and I guess that's partially because it was mostly on one or two planets, but in this we see different locations, we see the exploring of Jedi ruins, and we see a nice little back and forth between the different members of the team. We know that the spaceship in Fallen Order will sort of be like a home base, and we'll have lots of interaction with the different members, so it's good that they're interesting obviously, and Cal himself seems pretty compelling.